Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Podcast by 7 Shifts. I'm your host, DJ, and today on the show we have Lauren Fernandez. Lauren's an industry vet who founded Full Course, where she and her team invested and developed restaurant concepts to help them grow from one or few locations into multi-unit operators. We chat about how to make the right real estate decisions for your restaurant from the very beginning, what to systematize as you begin to scale your brand, and how to go about offering the right benefits in this changing labor market. It's a great conversation. I think you'll all be able to take something away from it back to your restaurant. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Hey, Lauren, how's it going?
Awesome. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for coming on the show today.
You are so welcome. I'm glad to be here. Happy
Absolutely.
Friday.
Happy Friday to you. So Lauren Fernandez, founder, CEO, Full Course. I can't probably do a better job than you. So tell us a little bit about your career in hospitality and what Full Course is all about.
Yeah. So I'm an attorney by profession, spent close to 2 decades doing product development and commercialization, largely first in the pharmaceutical space. And then later when I moved to focus brands in the food and restaurant space. And that's really my love is food and people and connecting with both. And so I was at Focus Brands for about 3 years, helping run their legal and franchise administration department, building their licensing program, and working on a lot of international deals. And after my time at Focus, I fell in love with franchising and I had some money to invest. I really wanted to own and operate a restaurant. And so I made the leap. I started a restaurant development firm with a partner called Origin. And we ended up purchasing the rights to develop Chicken Salad Chick, a Southern regional deli chain in the Atlanta, Augusta, and Athens markets. So overnight, I put the law degree away, got a hairnet, got a name tag. I got myself some really good non-slip clogs, and we were off to the races. And those 3 years were very transformative for me. So I put 3 restaurants back in the black that we had bought. And we proceeded over a 20-month period to build 8 more.
Wow.
And so had just the time of my life, really, both operating and developing restaurants with that brand. It was a phenomenal experience. I adore Stacey Brown, the founder, and really loved her vision and entrepreneurship. It was something I could really get behind as a female entrepreneur myself. And so when we exited the brand and the investment in 2018, I took a pause and I turned 40 and I thought, okay, now what do I do when I grow up? Right. And there were a number of things that I wanted to address about my experiences in the restaurant industry. One of them is that there's a lot of capital coming into the industry generally, especially through interest from private equity, but it's not coming down to smaller restaurants, right? Independent restaurants and single unit locations represent 70% of the market. Independent restaurants outnumber franchise 2 to 1. And there are a lot of single unit operators out there who need help and who need to know the playbook on how to get access to capital, how to develop their restaurant brand properly so that it'll be attractive at exit with a higher valuation. And quite candidly, that capital doesn't tend to flow down to women, minorities, and immigrant groups who have a cultural point of view with their food. And I just thought, as an industry, we can do better. We should be giving this playbook to everybody. It shouldn't have been as hard as it was for me, and I had it easy. I had partners, I had a wonderful franchisor, I had a team, I had funding, and it was still so hard. I am very candid about the fact that it almost broke me to achieve those levels of success. It was full-time development and full-time operations. So with Full Course, I took a step back and really thought about how I could be a part of this solution. The first thing that Full Course does is specifically target independent restaurants that are in the casual space from 1 to 10 units. We're really looking to help them get to a place where they'll be attractive for a second round of investment to a larger private equity group. The second thing we do is we fund that growth plan. We fully fund it with 1 bite at the apple, and we do not take a majority share. And the third thing that we do is we control and manage the development while working alongside our owner operators. While they are managing operations, we support them in that and implement best practices.
Sure.
But we also help roll out the capital through an extensive development team that we have. So it's really a complete solution for independent operators to realize the true financial value of what they've created in a restaurant brand. And that is what we do at Full Course.
So starting from the beginning, working with independent restaurants, maybe from like that 0 to 1, right?
Yeah.
What must a restaurant owner, restaurateur get right in that 0 to 1 stage before they're ready to go 1 to 2 and then all the way up to 10 and wherever that may go?
Yeah. So one of the things that we realized in the first year that Full Course has been in existence is that there are an extraordinary amount of people who are interested in continuing to help us grow the restaurant industry, even during this pandemic, which I find just admirable and amazing. So we had a significant amount of demand for folks who needed help going into that first brick and mortar unit. And
Yep.
so we developed a program called The Launch, specifically designed to walk them through the 12 steps that you need to be educated about. We'll give you the tips, the tricks, the tools that you need, including budgets and forecasts, scheduling and planning, everything from real estate to your grand opening marketing plan.
Yep.
That launch program is really our incubator project. Typically, for Full Course to invest and become an accelerator, an investor in a restaurant brand, they have to have at least one unit open for a year. And so this incubator project that we're working on, what we focus on is the sequential decision making that it takes to get that first location open. So we work on things like who are you? What are you doing to serve the public with this offering, with your restaurant? Who's your target audience? And when we start with the why of the
Yep.
brand, it really helps inform bits of the marketing strategy that we will flesh out later. But what's most important, I think, and a lot of people get wrong, is the real estate decision. If you know who you're targeting and the basic information, the menu, the day part segmentation, and where your customer is going to be, your ideal set of customers, that real estate decision gets really hyper focused. And I think one of the decisions that is very hard to undo is a bad real estate decision. And I know because I've inherited some bad real estate decisions, and it doesn't matter sometimes how much you pump into marketing.
Yep.
If you get that decision wrong, it's like putting the wrong horse in the wrong race. It's just never going to win. So we really spend a lot of time on those early fundamentals to inform the real estate decision. We connect our folks with brokers who understand the local market and can bring great deals to them. And that's another thing I'll add too, is a commercial real estate broker who has experience in retail and restaurants is extremely important. It's not a cost to you as the tenant. That cost is borne by the lessor, by the landlord. And that's someone who can help you negotiate your lease and make sure you don't get taken advantage of, and maybe even help you find a second generation restaurant space.
Yeah.
It may cost you a lot less than you ever could have imagined. So that's one of the major pieces of our launch product, that we do offer once a year live, but you can also take the courses pre-recorded if you've missed the annual session.
So I guess at its core, the main thing to get right is telling a compelling and cohesive story. Like, who are you? What's your brand? And without that, that kind of helps inform everything else, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think understanding your purpose and your mission and who you're serving in that moment helps inform almost everything else we do, whether it's the marketing decisions, the way the menu's designed, which day part segments you're going to be offering.
Yep.
It really does kind of set the anchor and the tone for the entire workshop that we do. But there's also a reason we focus on real estate early, because there's long lead times on that stuff. It takes about 12 to 14 months to open a first gen location, a clean slate location. So you do need to start that process very, very early.
Yeah. And when you say like a first generation, I've heard it say like a turnkey restaurant, like there's already a kitchen built out, everything's already there. When you say first generation, do you mean and literally clean like slate. Shoebox, empty slate?
White box. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and there's roughly even 150K to 250K in things that you may not even know how to ask for that we coach to. So making sure the HVAC is in, the grease trap is in, that you get finished drywall, that the door is in the right place. If there's a drive-through, there's considerations for that. So there's a lot that goes into very early negotiations with a landlord that you really need to know what you're doing, because I see this time and time again, just dollars out the door in a bad deal on an okay location, when if you had used a broker, the broker knows market value, knows how to negotiate, and can get you the best deal.
And when you talk about like what makes a good location, well, I mean, I guess what makes a good location versus a bad location? Is it really just customer base and like who's in the
Mhm.
area?
So a lot of things, but I'll drill it down to the top three that I look for. One is available access to your customer base at the right time of day.
Okay.
It does not matter if your customer is there in spades, if they're only there at night because they're working during the day and you
Right.
own a lunch concept. That makes no sense. So it's alignment to the customer base and access to them based on your day part segmentation, right?
Right.
So that's a big one right off the bat. Two, I think co-tenancy is really important. You can easily be in a situation where you're either in a strip where it's a food magnet where everyone comes to that area to eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner,
Hmm.
or you could be in a place where there's an oversaturation of food and there's too much competition, or you could be in a food desert and be the
Right.
only option in town, and that works great for some people. So I think kind of understanding the competitive landscape is very important, is especially the co-tenancies in the particular building that you're looking at. And I think the third thing, and this sometimes will vary, but I think for a lot of real estate locations, look at the demographics and definitely analyze against your plan. But there is absolutely no substitute for you sitting in the parking lot and watching what goes down. And I
Yeah.
know that this sounds kind of silly, but it's happened to me at least twice where everything looks great on paper, the demographics, the lease, like everything. We're about to sign on an LOI. And I say, just like, give me a second. I'm going to go take my laptop and sit in the parking lot and watch what happens. And it's like crickets.
Yeah.
And it's like tumbleweeds going across the
Yeah.
parking lot. And you start to observe certain behaviors and see a trend in the neighborhood or pick up on something weird. And that nothing can replace that instinct of putting boots on the ground. And it's something that we always flag as a must do, as one of our
Yeah.
top three pieces of analysis.
You just to backtrack a little bit. So all of that demographic data that's readily available online for the most part. You don't have to pay someone to do that for you. You don't have to like go crazy
I,
looking it up. It's all there.
I I don't think so.
Oh.
Here's my position on that is every broker I have ever worked with is well versed in that and has that
Mm.
kind of information at their fingertips. And my position on that is a value add service from your commercial real estate
Okay.
broker. No, you should not be having to pay for that. In many cases, if you're a franchisee, the franchisor actually runs their own analytics and will either rank a spot that you're submitting for approval or will provide similar demographic data about your marketplace, whether it's done as a heat map, like go here but not here, or it's targeting specific shopping centers. But again, I just want to go back to my point, like demographics are great, but they don't tell the whole story.
Yeah.
Put your boots on the ground and sit there and watch what's happening, preferably during a weekday and also on a weekend, and get a feel for what it is to see the foot traffic, the drive-by traffic, and observe the co-tenancies in action.
Would you also recommend taking that even a step further and chatting with people? I'm thinking of opening a restaurant. What makes you come and go here to this restaurant? Or, would
Yeah.
you go to a restaurant here?
I'm reluctant. I've been burned on this a couple times. I am
Okay.
reluctant to reveal who I am or
Mm.
why we're looking at a space. Unless we just generically say, hey, what happened to the restaurant next door? We noticed they exited. What went on there? I think that that's a great idea. To be perfectly candid, I know that our real estate brokers do an awful lot of that, and they all talk and kind of know the market very,
Yeah.
very well. So I take for granted sometimes that I don't necessarily have to do that. However, I think that that's an important thing to do, but be careful what you do say in those instances, because you don't want any of the co-tenancies to create issues for you. Like, let's say
Yeah.
they don't like your brand, are not advocating for it, or maybe they had issues with the prior tenant and they're already kind of have a chip on their shoulder. There's lots of things at play there. I think you can do a decent amount of reconnaissance and not be sort of sussed out as a potential
Yeah.
buyer.
Don't expose yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah. So I guess moving from there, real estate, you got the perfect location. Like you said, you work with brands that are there for a year. You've done the 0 to 1. You're doing well. What do you look for, and how do you get a restaurant primed then to go from that first location or first few to a more rapid expansion? Like you said, you took chicken salad. It was 8 locations in 20 months. So
Yeah, we
that's pretty
bought
quick.
3. Yeah, we built 8. Um, and we did that in a 20-month window, which wasn't, we had a jam-packed pipeline. What we didn't say was we also had 4 under construction, or some version of LOI when the deal happened.
Okay.
So there were 4 more coming down the pike when we sold our 11 units. I also had 3 non-traditional units that were more like a pop-up or a seasonal location.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on. That experience really helped me understand. And, it was not just, prior to my time at Chicken Salad Chick, I was really fortunate when I was at Focus Brands to be given a lot of training and deep understanding of the various brands that we worked with. And my department was in charge of franchisee compliance. So we saw a lot of operational issues. We saw a lot of programs roll out and assisted with all of obviously the legal side of that, but also the execution. And I learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. And from the very beginning that we owned our restaurants, we were looking to systematize and document everything. And one of the things I learned in that process is some things to lock down are more important than others.
Yep.
And so when we're working with our restaurant owners, almost immediately, the first thing we do is a team assessment. And we start with the ownership. We give them a DISC assessment and a workplace motivators assessment where we can come in and really understand their purpose, their why, and what makes them tick. I think really getting a deeper understanding of who they are as people is very critical to helping build out a team that syncs to their strengths and weaknesses. And we have very candid discussions about that, because the most important thing to scale when you're building restaurants is your team. So we start there. That is our mission from day one. Our Chief People and Culture Officer, Lisa Bowen, works directly with our clients to not only build out that kind of stage 1 org chart, but what it looks like as the company will grow. And really talks too about preserving, maintaining, and infusing the company's purpose, mission, and culture into everything that we do. So that's training materials, first day welcome, recruitment and retention, everything. I think that getting that people piece right first really helps us inform everything else that we're doing. Then we start there.
Yeah. So I guess starting from the leadership, maybe someone that the owner, operator, they're the founder of the brand or the restaurant, saying that they don't necessarily have to be like at the top the whole time. They don't have to handle everything. So for example, if they're really into the brand stuff, but the numbers are just like, I'm not good at that. Maybe bringing someone in, at that level to help with that, or vice versa.
Well, I think you have to play to weaknesses. When you put people in role, and this is just true in life generally, when you put people in roles where they're stretched to a point where they're uncomfortable, or they're not naturally aligned to what their purpose and mission and their natural work inclination is, you get friction there. Our mission is to make it as easy as possible and as enjoyable as possible for them to go to work. Look, everyone who works in our industry, whether you're an owner operator, an employee, a vendor, an investor, is doing this because they love people. And one of the saddest things I see is when an owner is wearing too many hats and they're so stressed that they lose sight of that. And so, yes, we do build out teams that kind of help complement them in ways, and we put them in a position where they can really thrive. And that, I think, is just the beginning. So when you tackle that problem, then you can dive a little bit deeper into the operations issues. You can really flex muscle and make sure that their pricing is accurate, that their menu is efficiently designed for scale, that, you've got good food and labor costs, that really the design of the restaurant itself is solid, the marketing message is there. And we really start fine-tuning that over usually about 6 to 9 months worth of consulting work before they get to investment. So we focus on not just people, but every aspect of the operation and the branding itself. And that helps us get to a place where we can plan their future growth.
I definitely want to talk about the people element of it, at length. But before we get to that, you had mentioned there are certain things that are more important to systematize than there are things that are more important, things that are less important. What are those things that are the most important to systematize?
Yeah. So, one of the many ways that we grow revenue for the brands that we work with is obviously through opening multiple company stores. But we also focus on non traditional units like airport stadiums, arenas, hospitals, colleges, and universities. We also do product development and spin products off of the restaurant, and we do franchising. And I firmly believe that every single one of those in channels is very important to not only building a stable revenue model for any restaurant brand, but really achieves a higher valuation for our brands at exit. And the reality is that every single one of those depends on a very buttoned up and clear understanding of what the brand's purpose, mission are, and how that's expressed. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we have the brand documented in a brand book. We know what the strategies are for those growth channels. While we generally advise for all four of those channels for every brand that we work with, every brand has a custom growth strategy. And that really is informed by the owner operator's purpose and mission. We want to make sure that the future that we're building for these brands aligns with them. And so there are sometimes other projects that are parallel to these main growth channels that we're doing that we put into the growth strategy to help fulfill their purpose and mission personally and professionally. When you're doing that, it's not just about the brand being documented. Every aspect of your operation has to be buttoned up and documented, from a recipe card to a training video.
Yeah.
And also, really infused with that brand's purpose and mission. That's what makes a really good company culture, is you are putting through and weaving through every aspect of the business that purpose and mission, and making it something that's in the air your employees breathe, and empowering them to be able to live that out. So we spend a lot of time on training materials, training videos, not just the sterile kind of paper documentation, but making it feel fun and like the brand. If the brand is cheeky and irreverent, then the training material should be a little cheeky and irreverent and kind of funny and off the cuff. And if the brand is more like sincere and endearing and about connecting to like families, then it should have a more sincere vibe about it. And I don't think that off the shelf materials necessarily do that. So we take the extra time to build those in-house and make sure that they're really infused with that culture and mission.
Just making sure that to the beginning, that brand story and who you are, really just infusing every single aspect of your business. And talking about culture and strong cultures, I think in the current situation, and I, of course, want your take on this as well, the labor shortage, if you want to call it a shortage, labor situation, labor market, the brands that have that extremely strong culture that's really baked into everything they do are the ones that are finding that they're not having a problem. We just talked to And Pizza, Andy Hooper on a couple episodes ago, Dan Simpson at Taziki's. They're saying they're not really having the same issues, at least not at that level, because of their strong culture. So I guess just to kind of kick it off, do you think it's a labor shortage that we're going through? And what is your kind of take on the labor situation in restaurants right now?
I have strong opinions. Are you ready?
Yes, that's what we want.
Yeah. Okay. So this is not a pandemic issue. The pandemic threw a giant floodlight on our industry and highlighted an issue that has existed for a long time. In 2019, 73% of restaurants reported being understaffed. 73%. And I know that statistic to be very, very real because I lived it. And there was a stretch of time where I was so short on managers. We were in an aggressive development cycle and we lost a couple people. And it took us 6 months to find, hire, and retrain replacements, in which I was running a restaurant full time, open to close, doing development for 4 under construction units at the same time.
Mm.
So please believe me when I say this existed long before
Yeah.
the pandemic. Now, we cannot ignore the fact that the pandemic certainly exacerbated this issue. Lots of people were furloughed, and when they were looking for alternative employment at exactly the same time, manufacturing and delivery were shooting through the roof, including jobs for, third-party delivery services and Amazon, et cetera, that were paying base rates of $15 plus and had benefits, right? So it was a fairly even swap for a lot of people who needed income because they were furloughed out of the industry. The real question here is, why aren't people coming back? Why are we unable as an industry to continue to recruit back record numbers of employees when sales are well in excess of 2019 levels and will continue to grow at record paces over the next 5 to 7 years? I think we have 2 issues here. One, I'll just say this, it's not a wage war. I think the economy is normalizing our wages on a market by market basis because there is a shortage of labor. You will have to pay whatever the market will bear for labor. But I have seen time and time again, matching wages is not the issue. You can pay someone top dollar and they will still leave right now. And, it's not about healthcare benefits either. I see a lot of stuff in the press and it's like the restaurant industry and that we're terrible and we don't offer healthcare. Well, I'll tell you, like I have offered it to employees and had, like, out of a pool of 500, like 2 people sign up.
Wow.
It's not that simple.
Yeah.
I think that we have bigger issues here related to leadership and generating the type of companies, whether you're a restaurant or not, that people want to work for. The upcoming generations, which, the largest segment by age of restaurant workers is 16 to 24.
Right.
That is a completely generationally, a completely different point of view. They care about social justice. They care about cause-driven companies. And if you do not have a purpose and mission that is driven out by you as a leader of a restaurant brand, that is able to be clearly articulated, that flows through every aspect of your restaurant, and it is easy for your employees to live out on a daily basis, you are missing the point. You will continue to struggle. And that's why I think there's a lot of institutions out there. I'm in the Atlanta market as my home base, and we often point out Chick-fil-A as an example, but I think there's something here that needs to be said. Even companies that originally were started on a religious principle had a purpose and mission. They've been clear about it from day one. And so even if they back down away, or it's more accepted generally that these are just good behavior principles that they promote, they still started out with a very strong purpose and mission. And you look at those companies and go, gosh, they're doing something right. And a lot of parents, like I'm a working parent, and I ask my friends all the time, where do you want to send your teenager to go work? If they were going to go work in a restaurant, where would you send them? They all say the same thing, Chick-fil-A, because they want their kid to learn what good principles, manners, and good customer service look like. Right. And right, wrong, or indifferent, they get it right. And I think there's something to be said for that. So if you really look at the core of this industry, we have, unfortunately, for some time, enjoyed a glamorization of the screaming chef at the line, right? Of kind of toxic, environments, which were first, have been called out for years in different shapes and forms. And Anthony Bourdain's book was one of the seminal works where we just kind of called out that behavior for what it was. But I don't know that we've shaken the ghost of that yet, if you get me. Like, I think that we need to start being really people forward as an industry. And that's how we build our brands at Full Course. Because I think that if you really get down to the heart of this, there is nothing more primal than feeding somebody, unless you want to talk about putting a roof over their head, putting clothes on their back, keeping them warm. It's such an act of love to serve someone food. And people talk about this industry and the food. Look, yes, obviously it's about food, but if you don't serve good food, you're going to be out of business. It's really a people business. People come back to your restaurant to enjoy the food as an experience, and the people are what make that experience. we've got to kind of course correct back to focusing this industry about people. And that's at every level of the company, every level.
Something that you mentioned interesting is like people always want to say it's, oh, well, no healthcare and we're not paying, it's not enough. And that certainly is a part of it. I think wages are certainly a part of it, but there's going to be a point where it's going to be a couple dollars difference. People aren't going to care if they're going to be able to get maybe better benefits, or they really believe in the place that they're working. They'll probably sacrifice that small amount because we're not talking about massive different wages. So I guess going into, you're talking about if healthcare is not the benefit that people are really looking for, maybe it's not as important to some. I guess, what are you seeing like in terms of benefits and offering staffs things? What's kind of leading that? What are people looking for what are people offering that are succeeding?
Yeah. So the way that we approach this is to have, pun intended here, a full menu of benefits that people can choose from.
Yeah.
I think if you consider on the one end of the spectrum, you have to speak to and offer an additional value and a benefit to a 16 to 24-year-old at the same time that you're trying to meet the needs of a working parent,
Right.
You really have to think about this differently. This is no longer just about healthcare and 401k. If you are still thinking about it in that way, again, missing the point. Rather, maybe, and this is something that even the smallest of brands can do, is get a list of approved benefits that run a complete spectrum. Engage your employees, ask the question, and make it a stipend every month that you give to them and they allocate as they see fit. And I actually got burned on this. The way that I learned to do this was I assumed healthcare was what our 500 plus employees wanted. I got my partners behind it. They signed off on the budget. We bid it out. I mean, this was like a 4-month process. We go and we announce it to the restaurants. 2 people signed up. And it blew the plan apart because we didn't have enough enrollment. And I was crushed and I fell on my sword. And I thought, you know what? I made a really critical mistake here. I did not ask what they wanted.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, a lot of them already had healthcare, whether it was state funded or it was through a partner, et cetera, or their parents. Do you know what the number one thing that they all asked for? Paid time off. And I was just like, my mind was blown. I'm like, oh, obviously, because for a lot of these folks, if they miss a day of work, that's money that's not coming in to feed their kids. That's money that's not coming in to pay for medicine. Like, that's a really hard decision for them. So they're exhausted and they're got kids and bills to pay and mouths to feed, and they just want a break. And so really take the time. I mean, my advice on this, and again, I think this is fully scalable, whether you're 1 unit or 100, is think about asking and engaging your employees of every position, salaried or hourly, part-time or full-time, doesn't matter age. Ask them what they want and leave the question as, here's some things, but open-ended. What else would you like? Take that kind of survey, put together a menu of benefits, and then arrange for it to be a stipend. Maybe it's a stipend that can grow to reward loyalty and longevity with the company. That would make sense to me. In the same way you would bolt on an extra day of PTO, why not grow that stipend?
Sure.
Maybe you can trade the stipend for an extra day off or two, that kind of thing. So I tend to look at benefits a little bit more holistically, and that connects to your employees because it shows them 2 things. One, that you actually give a crap about what they want.
Yeah.
And 2, that you actually want them to benefit from it. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, you go to talk to someone about the benefits package and they just take the package and they go like this. Okay. Because they just know it's not going to apply to them. But what if you told a 16-year-old that they could have money for gas for their car? What if you told a 24-year-old you were going to help them finish their college degree by offsetting their college tuition? That's a life-changing experience for them. You have an obligation to help better their lives as an owner operator, in my opinion. And if you are touching their lives in that way with a benefit that actually matters, you've just fought and won half the battle there.
Absolutely. I've heard some interesting ones too. My idea was always like, I would have loved if when I was in school, can you pay for my books? That would have been
Yeah.
really nice. I also heard from another chef, Jensen Cummings. He heard of a restaurant that noticed all of his, I think it was out in Denver, so a very outdoorsy town.
Mhm.
All of their employees had dogs, so they offered pet insurance paid for
Pet
by the company.
insurance. I saw that one too. I
Yeah,
love that
so
one.
small things like that that really do make a difference. I guess my question is, what do you say to the owner operator that says, my margins are already slim, I'm paying as much as I can't afford to offer these things on top. Where do I find the room, and how do I make it work?
Yeah. A lot of the work that we do creates not only cost efficiencies, but really maximizes profit margin. I think most people in this industry understand that, food and labor costs and pricing are the three things that most directly and exponentially affect your total profit margin. And so when we are in a fortunate position where when we come in and optimize these businesses and we see those kinds of improvements, it automatically creates a little bit of breathing room in the budget to be able to make these kinds of things happen. Often we see what I call the death spiral in a restaurant, and it looks something like this. You're not paying enough in wages. You don't have an employee value proposition that's attractive to someone to come and want to work for you. Your purpose and mission isn't clear to them. And so you're not only like spiraling down with the number of employees you have, but the ones that you have, you're overworking, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse until it's like the manager and one other employee standing there.
Right.
And then guess what? You have all the budget in the world to rebuild the team because you've only got two people working there.
Right.
And I've seen it happen. Like really toxic restaurants, you see them in the death spiral. You can see it happening.
Yeah.
And it's usually a leadership issue first. It's not actually a budget issue. Really great managers always figure out a way to find the pennies to make it happen. And, I think that that's a bit of, it's important to us that we put our money where our mouth is. And that's one of the reasons that we invest in leadership training for our owner operators. And we make sure that people plan that helps their company grow and scale is fully funded as part of our investment. You cannot cut a corner on that. If you
No.
try and slam growth onto a restaurant brand that is not fully baked and its people and its organization, the wheels will completely come off the bus. It's just not worth it. And it's completely anathema to our purpose and mission of being a very people forward company in service to others. So, that said, I think that you can always find the savings. And I think what's really interesting is great teams that run a restaurant like you know it when you see it, like it runs like a well-oiled machine.
Hmm.
You walk in the door, the vibe is happy, everyone's smiling at each other, they're like high-fiving behind the counter.
Yeah.
You're like, did I just walk into like a Brady Bunch movie? Like what
Yeah.
is happening right now? You feel that vibe. Those restaurants are super efficient and profitable, like every time. Like you can
Yeah.
just feel the vibe in there for sure.
Absolutely. And I think just kind of like in short, if you say if you say, oh, I can't afford to do that, that's going to stretch me too thin, you're probably going to pay for it at the end anyway. So it's preemptive in a lot of ways. Is that would you say that's true?
I I would agree that I think that that's where your money is best spent. I think if you had 2 extra dollars to spend, you are better off spending them on people and these things that we've been talking about and getting the benefits right and getting the purpose and mission right than you are on marketing.
Yeah.
I'll bet my money on that every day of the week, and that's exactly what we do. Because I think people who are aligned to purpose and mission work harder, work better, and work happier and produce a better result for the customer at the end of the day. And all of that contributes to better profit margins.
Absolutely. I mean, your best, we talked with Chip Close as well, saying your best marketing, the best tool in your marketing toolbox is the people that already come to your restaurant. If they have a better experience, they're going to talk about it to their friends. They're going to share it on Instagram, and then more people are going to come in the door.
That is the difference between a loyal customer and a complete and total apostle of your brand. Like I firmly believe in that. I think that you kind of create this, feeling of belonging that's a level above the loyal customer. And, they're not just super loyal. They're like family to you. They will drag new people to your restaurant. They will go out of their way to make sure that catering order comes to your restaurant.
Yeah.
And that's a game changer. For a lot of restaurants, that's the difference in 3 to 4% in sales. No joke. No joke.
And that 3 to 4% could be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
No, absolutely, which more than pays for the right employees, for the right benefits for them, for you to have all kinds of things like PTO and flexible schedules and, splitting and job sharing and all that kind of really, I think, forward thinking ways to treat your people right.
Absolutely. I think that's really all I had for the episode today. But if people are looking to work with you, just kind of want to learn more about Full Course or your company, where can people find you?
Sure. We're at fullcourse.com. You can grab time on our calendar by just clicking book a call.
Very cool.
You can reach me at lauren@fullcourse.com if you're interested in growing your restaurant brand or have any questions at all. We even help emerging restaurant brands, and we have an incubator program called The Launch. You can find that at fullcourse.com/the launch. And of course, we're on all forms of social media at Full Course Official.
Excellent. And we'll post all of that in the episode description and on social as well, so you can check it out there. But that's all I've got. So Lauren, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Dominick. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. Thanks again for checking out the Restaurant Growth Podcast. We're glad to have you as a listener. For more great content from 7 Shifts, check out our website and blog, 7shifts.com/blog. You can also hit us on all of the social media platforms at 7 Shifts. Thanks.